Okay, Shabbat Shalom. This is the newsletter, Sightedmoon audio newsletter, January 22nd, 2021. And on this day was the 9th day of the 12th month. So we're going back a little bit of a backlog. On the previous newsletter to this, the January the 15th one was apolitical, pretty much 99.9% all political. It was a repeat of what the MSM keep bombarding us with, which are, again, propaganda. So I'm not even going to go over that one. There were a lot of inflammatory comments on that too. But whatever, it's people's opinions. And we still, at the end of the day, we still love and respect each other. Or we should, at least. So they have it was a riddle, not a command audio book, and narrated by the, what's the word I want to use here? The very skilled and very talented Sally Cave. We have cut out all the costs to make this affordable to everyone. This means we have done away with the expensive production costs that Audible charges and the edits and all that goes into making this book 100% perfect. The normal going rate for a book that goes through this process is about $37 US. I think that's way too much for an audiobook. We're not charging that. I think typically it's around $5 to $10 for a typical audiobook. We're not charging that. We're asking for $5 to help us finance more translations in the future, and that's a fair price, $5. We hope you'll listen to the teachings in this book while you drive or as you walk about with your phones. So I read this book, and it's an excellent book. And I'm sure it's even better with the narration of Mrs. Cave. Let's just take a quick look. Since I already own this book, I'm not really shopping. I just want to see what this looks like on the menu here. Oh, so I can just play it. Oh, no, you can. Let's see, a sample. Oh, there's going to be, let me hear this. $470 megs total. It's taking a while to load. Okay, it's not E. I think that means error. So,
It was a riddle, not a command. By Joseph Dumond, Chapter 1, The Riddle, page 14. When Jesus, Hebrew name Yeshua, made the following statement in the Gospels of Matthew and Mark. But concerning that day and hour no one knows, not even the angels of heaven, nor the Son, but the Father only. Matthew 24, verse 36. Mark 13, verse 32. He was presenting a riddle or a parable so everyone could hear, but was also intentionally hiding the prophecy, so no one could understand it until the last days. Every time I teach about the sabbatical years and Jubilee cycles, alongside of the holy days of Leviticus 23, the prophecies show themselves as taking place during certain years and on very specific days. Almost all Christians, when they see me doing this, quote, shout out, or think of the scripture in the Gospel of Matthew below that Yeshua said, and then seek to justify themselves for not feeling under any spiritual obligation to listen to anything further I have to say. Yeshua said all this to the crowds in parables, and he did not speak to them without a parable, so that what was spoken by the prophet might be filled, saying, I shall open my mouth in parables. I shall pour forth what has been hidden from the foundation of the world. Matthew 13:34. Here Matthew is quoting David in the book of Psalms. Give ear, O my people, to my teaching. Incline your ears to the words of my mouth. I will open my mouth in a parable. I will utter riddles from of old, things that we have heard and known, that our fathers have told us. We will not hide them from their children, but tell to the coming generation the glorious deeds of the Lord, and his might, and the wonders that he has done. He established a testimony in Jacob and appointed a law in Israel, which he commanded our fathers to teach to their children, that the next generation might know them, the children yet unborn, and arise and tell them to their children, so that they should set their hope in God and not forget the works of God, but keep his commandments, and that they should not be like their fathers, a stubborn and rebellious generation, a generation whose heart was not steadfast, whose spirit was not faithful to God. Psalm 78:1. Again, we are told that Yeshua spoke to the crowds and his disciples in parables or riddles. With many such parables he spoke the word to them, as they were able to hear it. He did not speak to them without a parable, but privately to his own disciples he explained everything. Mark 4:34. We also see a repeat of this theme in the Gospel of John, about the Good Shepherd and how the crowds did not understand. This figure of speech Jesus used with them, but they did not understand what he was saying to them. John 10:6. Many Christians believe Yeshua taught in parables to make his message clearer, but contrary to popular belief, that is not what Scripture is telling us. He spoke to them in parables intentionally so they would not understand what he was saying, even though they heard his message. The disciples did not understand either. They repeatedly asked Yeshua to explain his parables to them. And when he was alone, those around him, with the 12, asked him about the parables, and he said to them, "To you has been given the secret of the kingdom of God, but for those outside everything is in parables, so that they may indeed see but not perceive, and may indeed hear but not understand, lest they should turn and be forgiven." And he said to them, "Do you not understand this parable? How then will you understand all the parables?" Mark 4:10-13.
Wow, that that was phenomenal. That was excellent. That should be nominated for a Grammy. That's how good it was. That was so professional, and not only was the pronunciation and enunciation top notch, but even the volume, the the volume, the pitch, everything was pitch perfect. That was glorious. That was just beautiful. If I had a book and I wanted to release an audio, release it into an audio format, I would hire her. That was in a heartbeat. That was amazing. Just top notch. That was great. I have. I'm just. I'm just. Wow. I don't know what else to say. Excellent. That was top notch. That was world class. That was just excellent. Now I have a lot to live up to in terms of this audio, this audio newsletter. It's not going to be as professional, unfortunately. Wow. Okay, so let's move on and look at the content. Okay, I will not read that. Not going to even touch that one. Not touching that. Nope. That's a minefield. That's a bomb right there. I'm not touching that, man. Okay, honest question. The barley search. Okay, right. So the barley search. Would there be a command for us to search for the barley? Well, let me see what he says here. Many things do not always make complete sense. Yah is trying to get us to exercise our brains and to search for the answers in his Torah and learn these secret things. Once we discover something, then we are more apt to remember it and how we learned about it. She just brings everything up a notch, so you have to raise your own standards. Once you read something to uh, that excellence, that level of excellence, there is a great reward in searching and finding truths. Yep, I know all about that now. Well, not all about it, but I have an idea of what that's like since starting my channel. In that searching, we often go and see what others have found and learn from them. Okay, so there's another question. This brother used Genesis 1:14 to justify his use of the equinoxes to to determine when the year begins. So I asked him, how exactly does this show him the Moedim, or the holy days? He began by telling me how the moon regulated the tides around the world, and with that, he could look on charts for high and low tides. I responded by saying that the Torah does not mention anything about the tides, nor us using the tides to determine the holy days. So then I asked him about how the stars show him when the holy days are. He said that the sun and the moon had to be in Virgo for the fall holy days to begin, and that they also had to be in the constellation of the Ram for the spring holy days. I asked him, what about the constellation Drift that was occurring over the centuries? Had he considered that in his calculations? I mentioned to him how the sun was moving through each constellation about every 2,000 years, if my memory was correct. I then asked how he calculated a 13th month, or Adar Beit, using the sun, the moon, and the stars of Genesis 1:14. No answer. I then asked him if he could explain how the sun determined the holy days. He quickly jumped on that, saying it was used to show when the spring and fall equinoxes were. I responded with that, but the equinoxes are not mentioned in the Torah, to which he said, he shall observe the Feast of Weeks, or the first fruits of wheat harvest, and the Feast of Ingathering at the year's end. The last word here is the word end, and in Hebrew it is tekufa, revolution of time. Okay. So does this word tekufa mean equinox, as some assume? This is a good question. To answer this, I turn to Nehemiah's Karaite corner. And before I move on, I recall doing a little bit of reading uh, regarding the Enochian calendar, and I believe they do employ the use of the equinoxes to determine the beginning of the year. So when the amount of time of daylight is equal to the amount of evening or nighttime, that is when the equinox begins, and that occurs twice in the year. So that's an interesting thought, an interesting uh, area to research. However, I did come to the conclusion that the moon really is made for the months and the seasons. Seasons regarding Moedim, not seasons as in the actual four seasons, but the uh, the fall holy days, spring holy days, and you do need the barley. That is really the determining factor. The agricultural harvests, the cycles to determine the festivals. If you're just going by the sun or the moon and without the barley, you're going to be in the wrong because there won't be anything to offer for the first fruits. There will be no wave sheaf offering, which actually means set apart offering, not actually waving it. But anyway, yeah. So that's very interesting. However, if we are in a state of universal flood or universal destruction of crops, and there's no way to determine a barley, then you would have to estimate either based on just counting the months, but because there is no barley, you might have to employ the Enochian calendar with the equinoxes. You might have to, which is an interesting proposition. However, one could always just estimate, okay, since we don't have any crops, we're going to have to estimate this will be either a 12th or 13th month. So we'll just do two Passovers, two of everything. So that could be another way to address that. Okay, so continuing on. Vernal equinox and Tekufa. Question: is the equinox mentioned in the Hebrew Bible? The claim has been made by proponents of the equinox calendar theory that the word equinox actually appears in the Tanakh. They are referring to the word tekufa, which appears in the Hebrew Bible 4 times. Tekufa is, in fact, the post biblical word for equinox. However, it never has the meaning of equinox in the Tanakh. Oh, what happened there? Okay. It never has the meaning of equinox in the Tanakh. In biblical Hebrew, Tekufa retains its literal meaning of circuit. That is something which returns to the same point in time or space from the root none. Okay, I'm not going to read that. To go around. To claim that Tekufa means equinox in the Tanakh just because it had this meaning in later Hebrew is an anachronism. This would be like saying that there were handguns in ancient Israel because the word ekdak, the post-biblical Hebrew word for handgun, appears in Isaiah 54:12. Good point. Let us consider another example of this anachronistic use of language. Before the invention of the electronic computer during World War II, the word computer referred to a man who sat at a desk calculating, computing mathematical equations. Good point. If we found an 18th century document mentioning computers, someone who computed, and proclaimed to the world that there were really electronic computers in the 18th century. This is exactly what the Equinox followers are doing with the word tekufag. Yeah, I agree with that. To better understand this, let us consider the four appearances of tekufa. So we're proving this now. In the Tanakh, so Exodus 34:22. The first one is mentioned in Exodus 34:22. Let me look this up myself. I don't trust the Masoretic text. Bible. There it is. So we're looking at Exodus 34:22. The first appearance of Tekufa is in the list of pilgrimage feasts, Hagim, in Exodus 34:22, which refers to the agricultural character of the Feast of Booths. And the Feast of Ingathering at the circuit of the year, Tekufat Hashanah, being misled or misread by the post-biblical Hebrew meaning of Tekufa. Some have interpreted circuit of the year anachronistically to refer to the autumnal equinox. It is doubtful whether the ancient Israelites even knew of the equinox. I don't know. That's kind of an ancient thing, so maybe they could have known. They certainly had no way of calculating when it would be. Really? Okay. This anachronistic reading leads to the suggestion of fixing the beginning of the year so that Sukkot falls out at the time of the autumnal equinox. However, a closer investigation shows that circuit of the year has nothing to do with equinox. The list of pilgrimage feasts also appears in a parallel passage. Okay, so the feast of so let's read Exodus 34:22. 34 and 22. We're looking at the Feast of Ingathering at the circuit of the year. That's what we're looking for. It's taking a while to load. So I'm not sure I agree with that because the Enochian calendar, I believe it's existed for a long time. And if it's true that it really came from Enoch, then it has existed since Enoch, which is before the flood. So I don't know if I completely buy that argument, just taking it as it is. There's an argument for and against, but to be honest, I do think the equinox was well known to the ancient world. That's something that is hard to not notice when the days and the evenings are the same length of time, days and nights. That's you're gonna pick up on that probably in your first 10 years of existence as just a human being living in nature. You're gonna observe these things, and obviously God was with them and He spoke with them. So, and angels were reality to them, and they were familiar with those. So there's nothing saying that they wouldn't be able to observe these things. They were more advanced than we are today in a lot of ways, connected with creation way more than we are now. The Feast of Ingathering at the circuit of the year. That's what it says in the Mass. Oh, uh-oh, froze. You shall keep to me the Feast of Weeks, the beginning of wheat harvest, and the Feast of Ingathering in the middle of the year. Wow, the middle of the year. So it's not the year's end. That's a mistranslation. So it's not even whatever they're saying here, year's end or circuit of the year. No, it's actually middle of the year. So middle is exactly the middle, which is the seventh month, because the year has sometimes 12, sometimes 13, but all in all, that's about the seventh month. So that's what it means. It doesn't talk about an equinox, although some could use this to argue, hey, the equinox is the middle of the year because equal time, uh, day and night on this one day. So that is the middle of the year. And the other middle of the year would be, or not the other middle, but uh, so that would be the halfway point. But halfway, 6 months from then, would be the new year. So you could use that to argue for and against the equinox, to be honest. So that's an interesting development. Didn't really know about that when I spoke about this chapter, Exodus 34, in my previous video covering it. So that's an interesting thing that I just noticed. So thank you to Sightedmoon for helping me see that, and to Yah for helping me to just put the pieces together. Okay, this is gonna be a long newsletter. The list of pilgrimage feasts also appears in a parallel passage. Okay, 23:16. So let's look at that one too. Exodus 23. Oh, that's the no, that's not Leviticus. So it says here, the feast of ingathering at the going out of the year, when you have gathered in your work from the field. So at the going out of the year, it's verse 16. The going out of the year. Okay, shouldn't take that long to load text. Oh, there it is. So the going out of the year, it says here, you shall keep the feast of the harvest of first fruits of your labors, whatever you shall have sown in your field, and the feast of completion at the end of the year, in the gathering in of thy fruits out of thy field. Okay, so it isn't the end of the year. It sounds like the end of the year in the gathering. So it's not the end of the actual calendrical year, such as saying it's the 12th, 13th month. That's the end of the year. But notice this is the feast of the harvest of first fruits of your labors. So, but isn't first fruits? Okay, I'm confused. Is this tabernacles or is this shall keep feast of unleavened bread? Okay, you shall keep feast of first fruits. All right, 3 times in a year. So where's the 3 times? Let's look for these 3 feasts. I don't know if they're actually in here. Let's just prove it. Prove the word with the word. You shall keep, okay, keep you a feast to me 3 times in the year. So number 1, unleavened bread. That's in the spring. So that's 1. And you'll keep the feast of the harvest of first fruits. I guess that is, oh, that's the feast of first fruits would be um, of your labors is Shavuot. So that's number 2. And the feast of completion. So that's Sukkot. All right, so there you go. Those are the 3 at the end of the year in the gathering. So that's That's not the end of the year, like calendrical year. It's the end of the year in the gathering. So of the year of the gathering, the period of time of gathering in, of harvesting, that's the end of the harvest year, but not the end of the calendrical year. I think that's the distinction. That's where the distinction lies. And is it the calendrical end of year? Is it the harvest related end of year? Um, Contrast these two passages. So going out circuit of the year. So we just saw it isn't even that. Um, I'm just going to scan through it now because I can see the truth. I can see right through it. It isn't even talking about end or cycle or any of these things. It's talking about the end of the agricultural year, and it's talking about the middle um, of the year, because we're talking, when it said middle, it's talking about the middle of the calendrical year, not the middle of the agricultural year. Okay. The word tekufa appears in Psalm 19 circuit. So let's look at that. Psalm 19, verse 7. Psalms. '19, verse 7. Well, it's going to be a long one, but I feel really good about this newsletter. This is completely the opposite of the previous week, the one previous to this, where it was pretty much mostly not this. So the law of Yah is perfect. No, is that it? Where's the Tekufan reference to the sun? Here too has nothing to do with equinox. Psalm 19 describes the heavens and sun from their unique vantage point, are witnesses to all things in creation, and thus metaphorically, he placed a tent among them. Okay, the circuit runs two. Okay, so let's look at that. Oh, here it is, 6. His going forth is from the end of the heaven, and his circuit to the ends of it. There's nothing hid from the heat thereof. So yeah, it is talking about the circuit of the sun. All right, nothing wrong with that. Circuit tuku fato. Mm, the daily path of the sun, right? Those loyal to Yah shall shine forth as the going. Okay, I don't know where this is going here. Tekufa circuit has nothing to do with the equinox, so that's the long and short of it. Okay, Tekufa in 2 Chronicles 24:23. Let's look at that. 2 Chronicles. Not my favorite book, Chronicles, especially the first book of Chronicles. It's mostly just names. You're allowed to have favorites and not favorites, and this is not my favorite. It's First Chronicles. 2 Chronicles does get into stories, so that's good. It's not monotonous, but I understand the need for historical genealogies. I don't know if genealogical is even a word, but verse 23. Tekufa and Exodus refer to events in the autumn. The same expression is also used to refer to events which take place in spring. It was the circuit of the year that the army of Aram came. Okay. So they're saying it's a circuit of the year that the army came. So let's look at that to prove that. 23. Second Chronicles 24:23. Oh, here. It came to pass at the end of the year, the host of Syria Yeah, so it is the end of the year. So that actually says end, not circuit. So I think it's a confusion here. There's definitely confusion going on with this word. The Masoretic is saying it means end and it means circuit and all these things, and it doesn't mean any of that. It's just a bunch of confusion, in my opinion. It was at the circuits of the days and Hannah conceived. Okay. So 1 Samuel 1:20 is the last one, I think. So that's not what it is saying. Thankfully, a faithful translation will clarify things for you. 1 Samuel 1:20. It says the circuit of the year, circuit of the days, I should say. Hannah conceived and bore a son. 1 Samuel 1:20. So the circuit of the days. So let's look. Hannah. Wow, we're not even halfway through. So this is 1 Samuel 1:20. It says here in verse 20, it came to pass when the time was come that she brought forth a son and called his name Samuel. Okay, doesn't say that at all. It just says when the time was come. Okay, I don't see it. It just doesn't say that. Was that the circuits of the days and Hannah conceived? Where's that even in the Masoretic? Doesn't say that anywhere. No. When the time was come, that's what it says. Okay. In both the Masoretic and the Septuagint. So I don't know where they're getting this from. It was at the equinoxes of the days. No, it's absurd, just like they're saying it is absurd. It's just making these more confused. So my brother asked me, where do I get the barley from the Bible to start the year? I responded by using the sun and the moon. The constellations assist, but I go by the sun and the moon. Then I wanted to explain in the exact same way he justified the use of the moon. To regulate the tides, I use the heat and warmth of the sun. To regulate the growth of the barley, to bring it to maturity. Yah controls how much sun or warmth will land on the barley and make it glow. If he wants to slow it down, then he sends cold rains and clouds to slow the growth. If he wants to speed things up, he stops the rains and sends hot air heated by the sun. So by watching the growth of the barley, I could know when Yah is telling me to begin the year, because we must have barley for the wave sheaf on the morrow after the Sabbath during the days of unleavened bread, to which he agreed. And I only diverge from that because the majority of believers believe that you count from, I believe it's after the Sabbath, the weekly Sabbath, but I've been led to, not just led to, but I proved it to myself that it's not the weekly Sabbath, it is actually the holy day, after the holy day, because it's 3 days and 3 nights. Anyway, or not 3 days, 3 nights. It's the third day. When he said the third day, anyway, you can watch my video on that. It's quite groundbreaking. I said, if you go by the equinox, you will not be watching the barley. You may not have the first fruits to wave on wave sheaf day. It has to be the first. Yeah, not the middle or the end of the leftovers that you have. that you wave before, yeah. Okay, will not break my covenant. The sun and the moon are faithful witnesses. You can see the sun each day, feel its warmth around you. The moon, you can see. Okay, I'm just going to skip over a little bit. Okay, the month of Aviv. So, yeah, Aviv is a big proof that you need the barley. Aviv indicate a stage in the development of the barley crops. This is clear from Exodus 9:31 to 32. The flax and the barley were smitten because the barley was, I think it's in the head and all these things like that. These are agricultural terms to stage what to identify which stage of growth the barley is in. So I completely agree. Um, to understand the reason for this, we must look at how grain develops. When grains are early in their development, they are flexible and have a dark green color. As they ripe, as they become ripe, they take on a light yellowish hue, become more brittle. The reason that the barley was destroyed and the wheat was not is the barley had reached the stage in its development called aviv, and as a result, had become brittle enough to be damaged by the hail. In contrast, the wheat and spelt were still early in their development, at a stage when they were flexible and not susceptible to being damaged by hail. The description of the wheat as spelt as dark and spelt as dark indicates they were still in the stage when they were deep green and had not yet begun to lighten into the light yellowish hue which characterizes ripe grains. In contrast, the barley had reached the stage of aviv, at which time it was no longer dark, and at this point it probably had begun to develop golden streaks. I was going to say steaks. Golden steaks. Mm. I'm hungry for steak. No, but in all seriousness, yeah, that's why Aviv can mean new, but it also is a stage of, like it was mentioned, ripening. So it is ripe. That they were flexible. They were not damaged by the hail, but if it they were if they were like the uh, flax, which was new, they would have been smitten, like brand new. I mean, Aviv is still new, as in they're a new crop, but they're not brand new, like they just started growing. No, they're already at a certain point that they're ripe and ready to be harvested. Okay, Parsht Aviv. We know from several passages that barley, which is in the state of Aviv, has not completely ripened, but has ripened enough so that its seeds can be eaten, parched in fire. Parched barley was commonly eaten food in ancient Israel. I want to try some. And is mentioned in numerous passages in the Hebrew Bible as either Aviv Parched Chalui in fire, or in the abbreviated form Parched Kali. While still early in its development, barley has not yet produced large enough and firm enough seeds to produce food through parching. This early in its development, when the head has just come out of the shaft, the seeds are not substantial enough to produce any food. At a later stage, the seeds have grown in size and have filled with liquid. At this point, the seeds will shrivel up when parched and will only produce empty skins. Over time, the liquid is replaced with dry material, and when enough dry material has amassed, the seeds will be able to yield barley parched in fire. Aviv in the harvest. Oh, we're only halfway. The month of Aviv is the month which commences after the barley has reached the stage of Aviv. Okay, 2 to 3 weeks after the beginning of the month. All right, there's a lot of staging. I'm going to just skip over it. But essentially, yeah, you need to find the barley. It has to be Aviv. Yeah. So it has to be developed enough that it is ready to harvest 2 to 3 weeks later. So it has to be just right. Uh, It is brittle enough to be destroyed by hail. So that's where it has to be. Okay. Right. The first fruit offerings brought by individual farmers can carry in ripeness anywhere from a vive, parched in fire, to fully ripe grain, which may be brought crushed. Okay, so anyway, I think you get the point. You need the barley. That's absolutely mandatory unless all the crops are destroyed. But you know what? I think Yah will allow there to be enough, and maybe just the barley to survive of all the crops on the planet, just so we can know when the new year begins and when Passover is to be and the rest of the feasts from that marker. So that's very, very important, and that's why I'm talking about it, and that's why I'm recording this. Um, so very good newsletter so far. Complete contrast from the previous week. I am the Aleph and the Tav was previously posted December 6th, 2020. I think I might have done this one already. I might have. So I'm just gonna. All right. Past articles. Tetrad of blood moons. All right. I want to talk about another eclipse. Uh, solar eclipse 21 August 21, 2017. A coming total solar eclipse April 8, 2024. That's going to be scary. They formed an X across North America, so I wonder what's going to happen in that time. It's still 3 years away and some change in 3 months, I suppose. Maybe, yeah, just under 3 months. I want to talk about another eclipse that arrives before April 8th, 2024. That is the annular solar eclipse of October 14th, 2023. Oh, that year is looking foreboding for some reason. Notice that once again, it will traverse across North America, including the United States. Its path will take it over the American Southwest and Texas. So that's going all over from South America to, yeah, like it was mentioned. Now I want to show you the clips of April 8th, 2024. Let's look at that. So this is 2023. October was probably around the feast or just after it. And this is around Passover, the spring festivals. So let's look at this total solar eclipse. It's going through the other way. So one is going this way and the other one's going that way. So it is an X, but where is the crossing point? Where do they cross streams? Right about here, I'd say. Right about there. That's like Texas, right? That is Texas, isn't it? And that's just one of the best states, isn't it? Texas, one of the best financially, I mean, and a lot of reasons too. I will show you the image of August 2017 solar eclipse one more time. Okay. Now, thanks to the magic made possible by Great American Eclipse website, I want to show you what these three eclipses will look like when you put them together. Wow, this is interesting. So one is over here. I don't recognize that. Let me just take a closer look. Get a bit closer. That looks like, what is that state? I have to zoom in. That looks like Delaware. I don't even know. That's Ohio, Chicago. I can barely make that out. Nashville, is that Tennessee? I might have to just read. I might have to just read on. But this is definitely Texas. I can see that horn area here. That's Texas, South Texas. But either way, it crosses through the United States, pretty much east and west. and all around kind of misses. Actually, doesn't really miss it. It's sort of, I don't know if you could say this is missing it. I mean, California is not in its direct path, but it is Florida too. I mean, what are you supposed to do? Do like a ribbon? But anyway, it is crossing through it. For those of you who can read Paleo Hebrew, okay, is this an aleph? Hmm. For those of you who can read Paleo Hebrew, alarm bells and whistles should be going off in your head. Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's one, two, and three. Um, and the other way, is there one going here? No. Paleo Hebrew is the type of Hebrew used in the time of King David. And for your readers of Paleo, many, if not most of you, should be able to locate these two Hebrew characters in the image above. There's two. This brings us to the title of the article. For those of you who cannot read Paleo Hebrew, let me give you a little help. The Aleph is the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet. It would appear as a sideways A. Yes, Virginia. This is where our English A originates. So that's Virginia. Is that what it's saying? Um, yeah, I see it. I definitely see the Aleph part there. Yeah, it's not here. This is like a tav, I think, like an X. That's interesting. Okay, so where is it going? Carefully observe. Oh, next the Paleo Hebrew tav, which is the last letter of the Hebrew aleph bet, which would appear as an X or cross sideways. Yes, you got it. This is where our T comes from in English. Okay. Oh yeah, it is a T. I thought it was an X. It looks like a, it appears like an X. So tav actually is a T, and aleph is an A. Wow, this is really mind blowing in some ways. Carefully observe the X that crosses the United States and centers itself near Cairo, Illinois. Illinois. Okay, so that's Illinois. Uh-oh. That's Chirac. And this would be the Tav. Now look at the two eclipses that are together in Washington State and Oregon State area and then split. One going across the heartland of America in 2017, and the other going across the American Southwest in October 2023. These two form the V shape of the Paleo Aleph, and the eclipse going from Texas to Maine forms the upright leg or eye portion of the Aleph. I purposely used the NASA maps because of the data included in the tracks of the eclipses, i.e., magnitude, gamma track, width, and duration, and other things that I will need to use to plot intensity at some future time. Remember, this is much like magnitude or amplitude. I just chose the word intensity so as not to cause confusion with earthquakes or radio waves. Yeah. For those of you who are followers of the way, the dates of these eclipses should be the next thing that has probably already caught your attention. October 14 and April 8th. Yeah. The feast days, most likely feast festival, fall and spring holy days. Most of you may not understand, but you should know that I do not follow the halal Jewish calendar. I understand the supposed necessity of having the calendar. If you go out to sight the moon, you will be killed by the Romans, but I'm not Jewish or Roman. I'm a follower of the way. Our Messiah commanded us to watch for what this sliver of the moon. I said this to qualify what I'm about to say. October 14th could very well possibly line up with the celebration of Sukkot. April 8th could very possibly line up with the celebration of unleavened bread. Please remember the Passover is the preparation day for unleavened bread. Since April 8th is on a Monday, will not be first fruits. Um, Okay, it is even possible. But then Adar Bait, or 13th month, could be Aviv, the first day of the first month of Yah's calendar. Yeah, could be. Author's note: for those of you who would like to learn more about the sighting of the sliver, or the day and hour no man knows, I recommend Joseph Dumont's book. Okay, so who's writing this? This is someone else writing, because Joseph wouldn't talk about himself in the third person. If you'll remember, or research, if you don't remember, August 21, 2017, the eclipse fell during the 40 days of repentance prior to Yom Kippur. Okay, so there's quite a lot of speculation here. And this is the I am the Aleph and the Tav part 2. So there's a coincidence about the great American eclipses. So let's just get to the nitty gritty. Well, this is interesting. This week, I want to show you why the Aleph and the Tav are so notable and important to all believers in Yeshua HaMashiach. To do this, I will try to give you a thumbnail understanding of the ancient biblical Hebrew. The glare is really getting my eyes. I need my lenses. I don't know where I put them. Here's the test. Yeah, I'm going to get my lenses. Let me just pause. I'll read this paragraph over again. I'm just going to highlight this and pause it so I know where to start. Let's just give it a pause. Okay, my eyes were hurting, so I have to wear these glasses. Um, so this week, I want to show you why Aleph and the Tav are so notable and important to all believers in Yeshua HaMashiach. To do this, I will try to give you a thumbnail understanding of the ancient biblical Hebrew language. Here is the first test as to whether or not something is important. How many times does it occur, this case, in the Tanakh/Old Testament? God's name in the Hebrew Bible is YHVH. Is found 6,954 times in 5,899 scriptures. That's a lot. That's a lot. YHVH's most common title in Hebrew is Elohim. This is found 2,365 times in 2,078 verses. Now, the word composed of Aleph and Tav is found the word composed of Aleph and Tav is found 7,302 times in 5,650 verses. So that's more than both of those. Think about that for a moment, and you will see that this is a very special word if it is mentioned more times than the name of YHVH himself. But how? Let me try to show you. In the very first verse of scripture, Genesis, where you find the word, or should I say the word, used twice. Okay, let's see. Aleph and Tav, sure. Do I see it twice though? Oh, there it is. Okay. If you look closely at the blue words, you will see Aleph Tav appears twice. Oh, okay, so that was part of the verse. I thought that was its own thing, but no, that's excuse me. That's part of the verse. That is the verse. If you look closely at the blue words, you will see, okay, so it's twice in the very first verse of scripture. Wow. Yeah, it is the first verse of scripture when it talks about the creation. And I do believe, I'm not saying I believe the Masoretic as it is, but I'm saying that before the Septuagint was in Greek, it was in Hebrew. So although the Masoretic is 100% close to the original Hebrew, there are still elements of it that would remain. And I think this is one of those things that do remain, the Aleph and the Tav. It's very interesting. Hebrew was the language of creation, still is. If you look at if you look closely at the blue words, you'll see Aleph Tav appears twice in the very first verse of Scripture when it talks about creation, the creation. If you want to try and figure out what is going on, try reading John 1. Important note, please remember Hebrew is read right to left, and the Hebrew shown here is another is here is a modern block form, not Paleo Hebrew. Yeah, not the Paleo Hebrew I showed you last week. And I had a thought, but I just lost it though. Yeah, the Aleph and the Tav. Okay, so that is in the first verse of Scripture. Yeah, I was gonna say that Hebrew, the language of itself, it isn't a salvation issue whether you can speak it, understand it, or fluent in it, and if you're an expert in Hebrew, that's not gonna get you in the kingdom. I mean, it's helpful to understand scriptures, but it's not mandatory or anything like that. Obviously, it isn't, but some people may be led to a preference that everything in Hebrew or Hebrew is better than English and all that. And I can understand that viewpoint from the sense that you understand more Hebrew idioms and maybe a better idea of Hebrew customs and the context of the time. But in terms of just comprehension, it's not, Hebrew isn't going to give you a ticket in the kingdom just because you understand it or speak it. It's about the essence of the word, what is actually, what is what is the intention of the message being delivered to us into our ears, into our hearts, and will it take fruit, and will it bear seed, will it plant in our hearts, will it bear fruit in our lives in terms of the words we use, our behavior, the things we think about, etc. So let me say here that what I was taught 40 plus years ago when I first began to study biblical Hebrew is that according to many scholars, the Aleph Tav is the definite article of the direct object in a Semitic language. That is the official line. Let me give you a classic Arabic example of what I am talking about. El Muammar el Gaddafi, the name of the now dead dictator of Libya. The L is the definite article that must accompany a noun in construct. It gets a lot more complicated than that, but just wanted to give an example. If it is not in construct, you do not need the else. That is why Westerners don't understand why Arabic names are not consistent. Wait a minute. If Aleph Tav is the definite article of the direct object, then every direct object should have one, right? That's a good point. Nope, not in biblical Hebrew. Only certain objects have this particular definite article. So what gives? The Aleph Tav is a prophetic marker of instances of prophecies of the Messiah. Wow. In my layman's opinion, that's an interesting opinion. This is where I need to explain some of the Hebraic meanings behind the Aleph Tav. First, the Aleph is the first letter of the Hebrew word for Elohim, so it can represent YHVH. It can also represent the beginning and the end, since Aleph is the first letter of the Hebrew Aleph, Beit, and Tav is the last letter of the Aleph Beit. Something you must consider is that the Paleo Hebrew has four dimensions, and I will refer to this as 4D Hebrew, 4D chess. What are these? What are those dimensions? First is conventional, common script equals letters. Second, letters are pictures that convey meaning, pictographs. Third, each letter has a numeric equivalent, and that's gematria. That's actually witchcraft. So let's not get into that. And fourth, Hebrew is designed to be sung. So the fourth dimension is music. That's an interesting one. Don't really know much about that one. For reference, I'll give you the Paleo Hebrew Aleph Beit. Okay, so this is the Paleo. Where's the Aleph? Oh, here it is. So right to left. That's really cool. It actually even looks nice too. It looks ancient. I mean, it is ancient, but I mean, it just looks like from a movie. It's really cool. I really admire this. And then you have the Proto Canaanite Hebrew, which is even cooler. Oh, there it is. It's right there. Oh, I love it. Once again, just for reference, let me include the numbering system. Again, Hebrew, it's not mandatory. It's not something you need to be, it's not a salvation issue, but it's so unique and special. It is, it does warm the heart to some degree when you really look at it. It's just when you look at ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs, you're going, "Oh, those are mysterious and cryptic and very intriguing." But when you look at this, you know this has a direct link to the roots of creation, of Moses, of our faith, everything, all the forefathers. It's so lovely. You get it's kind of like when you, not that I've ever been, but if someone goes to Jerusalem and they just, some people pass out because they just are overwhelmed by just how much meaning that place has and so much history there. All the biblical history really revolves around that piece of land. It's beautiful, so beautiful, and they're just in awe of it all. When people get starstruck, but when you get Israel struck, I mean, I think it's perfectly understandable to have that sense of awe and wonder about it, and just knowing, people read Lord of the Rings and they go to New Zealand and think, hey, this is Middle Earth. No, that's where they filmed the movie. But when you read the Bible, you actually go to Jerusalem. Yeah, that's actually where it happened. This is where a lot of the events happened. It's amazing. Okay, so let's move on. Believe me, right now, you have more tools at your disposal than I had 40 years ago. I'm giving you all, I'm giving you all of this to show that I am not making this up. Also, please be mindful of all copyright marking. I am claiming nothing about what I'm showing you unless it is something that I have developed, in which case it is open source. Now, let's put the Aleph and the Tav together and see what meanings they have. The first and the last, represented by their position, the Aleph Bet, the beginning and the end, Yah's covenant with man, prophetic marker, and entirety, like we would say from A to Z or Z. Okay. So what does all of this mean? So it's covering everything. When you say A to Z, that's covering it all. That's just everything. And it's also the first and the last. There's a lot of meaning into this. What does this all mean? Okay. For one thing, it shows I have not passed on many of the miracles that I have discovered in Yah's word to you, so that you could see them and share them. Something I need to work on. Next, that there is a cohesive plan from beginning to end in the scriptures. And by studying the beginning, we can better understand the end. Okay. Remember the former events. Okay. Declaring end from beginning. Now I have to tell you why all of this is important, right? If you're not familiar with the following articles, please go back and read them to understand the relevance. So who's Codgerville? Who is Codgerville? Let's see who this is. That's familiar to me. Is this that Cyrus gentleman, or is this uh, Nehemiah? Okay, so this is from quite a while ago. Um, this is like a big red pill, this website. Okay, who is Codgerville? How do I go to their main? Let's click on there. Maybe it'll take me to the home page. I just want to find out who this guy is. Is this Cyrus? I think his name is Cyrus. Harding, I think. I don't want to dox him. Sorry. December 15th, 2020. Oh, that's not too long ago. Codgerville.wordpress. Let's see who this is. Dear friends and first time. So it is Cyrus. Oh, Cyrus D. Harding. Yeah, this guy, I think he's on point. This Cyrus, Mr. Cyrus Harding there. Yeah, I'm totally open to what he has to present. He has it on, he has it down pat in so many ways. So let's read this. Read these articles. Okay. America's Destiny. Wow. These are, maybe I'll read them all. I don't know. I'm going to just put them in my tabs for future reference because there's only so much you can read in terms of truth seeking, and this guy might just have it nailed. This is where you begin in order to discover that there is a plan that stretches from beginning to end. Trust the plan. Please pay special attention to part 3. I think Mr. Cyrus there knows what I'm talking about when I say number 17. Am I right? You will find 17th letter of the alphabet. Hello. Not going to say what it is. Um, you will find it highlighted in the blue, entitled The Jubilee Calendar from Creation of Adam to Our Time. I developed this in the winter of 2012 to 2013 to illustrate what it was that I was seeing repeated in scripture. Since that time, I found Charles Reed, now deceased, and Joe Dumont's works are on the same topic, but their work is in greater detail. So please don't compare my meager understanding to theirs. But here's the important part. All three of us agree on the following points. America entered into judgment in 1996, the beginning of the last 120th Jubilee cycle. We are midway through the 120th cycle. The cycle ends spring of 2024. Spring of 2024 begins the cycle of slavery. That would actually fall in line with two terms of, that guy who actually won the election. So we'll see how that develops over time. To understand this, go back to the 3 articles above because it is shown in detail. Now, please go back and look at the final of the 3 eclipses, that of April 8th, 2024, which could very well be month 1 of Yah's calendar, and see that it is laying the final stone of the foundation for judgment upon America. It is proclaiming that America has abandoned Yah's covenant and will be dispersed, destroyed. Whoa, that's heavy. Yeah, I'd love to get into a conversation with this man. I probably wouldn't have a lot to share, but who knows? And I just want to mention that besides these 3 gentlemen, I also agree to some degree. I have a theory that it may or may not be this, but it is looking very much, especially with what's transpired in the last uh, 365 days, and since pretty much Passover of last year and leading up to that. This is if this is not a birth pang, I don't know what is. Because to be honest, the DS are losing their minds. They're going insane, and they're looking so desperate. They're looking afraid. They're looking like they're running out of time to do what they want, which is their plan. Uh, so I'm wondering, why are all these crazy things happening? I mean, a lot of them are, people would say, manufactured by people in high positions, but behind those people in high positions are spirits. When you see the spiritual reality of people in leadership roles, I should say, so the enemy knows he has a short time, so he's going to do as much damage as he can before his time is cut off. Okay, Genesis. Oh, I wish I could tell Mr. Cyrus about what the truths I found in the Septuagint, because the Masoretic has covered up a lot of lies. Okay. Um, the sad part of all this is that the modern church has discarded Yah's Torah or word and embraced the New Testament and forgotten the beginning, So they do not see the prophecies in the Torah. It is not all done yet, folks. Ask yourself, Jesus said he did not come to do away with, but to fulfill or complete. And the Torah would not pass away until heaven and earth pass away. So has heaven passed away? Has earth passed away since Yeshua was on earth? No. If not, you need to get back to the beginning so you can understand the end. You can't separate. You can't separate the Aleph and the Tav because they are Yeshua. So essentially, what he's saying, or what he could be saying, is once his words are completed, once they've come to pass, only then can heaven and earth pass away. Because it is prophesied that the heavens will roll up like a scroll and the earth will dissolve and all that. So they are going to pass away, but not before all the things that Yeshua uh, had spoken of needs to be complete, needs to be fulfilled. That is really, really, that is something. I don't even have the words. That is, oh, we're done. Okay, I thought we had more. Uh, why not remain neutral in political issues? Who gave you the right to pick a side? Yeah, it's a fair question. Is it not facts that decide an event? Um, if Trump said the election was a fraud, why then could he stand idly by watching the cheater take his position? And I have to add, if he was talking about this way back in 2013, even before he announced his candidacy, he knew something was going on. Even back in the second term of, or the re-election of President O over there, former President O, who they did use Dominion machines even back then. They only got caught now, or not, yeah, not just caught, but only was brought to people's attention now, just like the uh, big forest fires that have been going on for years and years in Brazil. It only was had the spotlight shown on it because they don't like Bolsonaro. The caravans going to the border of Mexico and the United States, and all those things, evil things being done to the people there, that has been going on for years too. But it only was brought to the attention to the public and the mainstream because they don't like the guy in the office. But if they agree with him, they're not gonna bring a watchful eye to it. They're gonna turn a blind eye to it because they like whoever that person is in office because they're part of the DS, whether it's the left or the right. But because you have an outsider, you're gonna criticize him and turn everyone against him so that he will be overturned, and it's a mutiny. Okay. If all these conspiracies are false, who cares? Yeah, but if things turn out overnight, turn around while we are sleeping, that's exactly what happened. Oh no, we're losing. Everybody, stop counting. Okay, what are you doing? That's illegal. You can't just stop counting in the middle of the night. All the swing states, or not swing states, all the states were being handily won by like hundreds of thousands of votes, and then you just stop counting. That's not democratic. That's very suspicious. You don't do that unless you have some plan to overturn it. And then they got caught with the video and all that. Knowingly promoted false information. Who's slandering now? Just, yeah, I mean, when you promote I'm not talking about Joseph, I'm just talking about the MSM who just slander and make up stories and project the evil that they do, talking about those on the other, the left, projecting it onto the right. And, it really isn't a left right thing, but it just happened to be that way for this election. So everything that they're doing, they're going to accuse the other side of to draw attention away from their own sins. Just wait, respond carefully because you might be eating your own words. I mean, remember the Pharisees, they accused Jesus Christ of blasphemy and all these things. Well, what they were doing was blasphemous in a lot of ways. What they were doing was hypocritical. They were breaking the laws. They were uh, accusing Yeshua Hamashiach of breaking the Torah, you know, but turns out they were the ones breaking the Torah, the spiritual Torah. Okay. Very reluctantly, I've commented over the past few weeks the political scene in the United States doesn't matter, it's lose lose. I don't agree with that. How is it lose lose? One's evil, one is not as evil. I mean, I wouldn't even say not as evil. One is completely evil, like demonic and satanic, and one is actually bringing people towards God. I'm not saying complete truth of the Torah, but at least some form of godliness. It's better than complete evil. It's good versus evil. That's what's going on. Um, do you know how many people have been arrested for human trafficking and PEDOs all over since the previous administration? A record amount, but it only started with him. Before him, it was like a trickle. It was like a slow drip. But when he came into the office, it was like a flood of good news concerning people being uh, caught and arrested and just being brought to justice for these horrendous crimes against humanity. Okay. I think I'll avoid commenting. Yeah. I mean, I would want to avoid commenting too, but you know what? Sometimes you just have to take the side of the truth. I mean, there's truth and then there's lies. It's not about left, it's not about right. It's about truth and lies. And it's not about what? Anyway, I agree with this. I hope this is overturned. I'm a believer no government is perfect. Agreed. But I mean, they have to have free and fair elections. And anyway, they're just ruining democracy. Actually, it's not even democracy. It's about the republic. They're not even obeying the republic's laws. Yah's word is not easy to understand. Okay. Okay, I'm not getting into that. The question of seeking the barley has crossed my mind as well, and reading the answer made me realize that all of it has been written before, but got obscured in the tumult of my mind. Thanks for setting it out plainly. This was a great newsletter, to be honest. It was whatever last week was, I'd say, I don't know. I'm not going to rate it, to be honest. I didn't really go through it, just the comments. And I won't even post that because those were a little inflammatory. Um, but this one was excellent, world class. World class. The second section is fascinating. We'll have to print it out to study more. The small screen of my phone makes it difficult to read and comprehend. I second Robert. Who's Robert? There's a Robert Omar. I second Robert. Have been adamant on following lawyers and hired analysis who are working on the election fraud. Okay. Yeah, I saw the evidence too. And I mean, what they're going to deny video evidence of all these things happening. I mean, you got to be pretty delusional to say that is fake because they have hundreds of hours and hundreds of people sworn affidavits. So all of them saying it's far from over. Well, I mean, they just stole the election, but we'll see what the military has to say about it because the military they are not recognizing the current administration as legitimate. So, and you can see in a lot of the things they've done, they are kind of subtle, but by the book and very specific and very not accidental, completely intentional things they've done, such as the one with the 21 gun salute, where normally it would be 3 to 4 seconds in between uh, shots or fires. I don't know the guns, but for the current person there, um, it was 10 seconds intervals. That's what you do to a uh, foreign government official, someone who is not part of your nation, or for a funeral. Even Mike Lindell, billionaire who has donated millions. Oh, he's a billionaire. I didn't know that. To overturn this election, said just in the past week confirming evidence for his team have been provided. Then we have Ricky Schroeder, actor, who said yesterday he's about to donate as much as he can. Wow. Bottom line, this election is far from over. There's no conspiracy in that. Telling someone to repent when they still have hope on proven election fraud being overturned is ludicrous. My suggestion is to step away from MSM. Agreed? To look at what is really coming out. Um, Even to the point they dismissed the case. Okay. Asking the court to reject the case. They're lying. Okay, right. The media platforms are saying the dismissals are rejecting them. It's fake news. Yeah. The lawyers are saying the opposite. Okay, I don't want to spend too much time on that. Let's just skip that. Oh boy, here we go. Cosmos 1947 was adopted after the editor in chief castigated me by name for paraphrasing. Okay, this guy is being sarcastic. Um, all right. Don't require a level playing field. Okay, so this person was allowed to post and comment on the site, but he's kind of complaining about it. Anyway, that's his opinion. We should realize the time for political maneuvering is very short. I don't think this person follows the 17th letter. Isolate the DS political players. The almost to a man peaceful patriotic conservatives refuse to take the leftist fool's gold bait and panty energized police allowed insurrection. I was disappointed president chose not to attend the ceremony. Why would he? It's not a legitimate election. Why would you attend something that's not even real? Yeah, he would have diminished his respect for. Yeah, that's true. No one would respect him anymore. That means he would acknowledge its legitimacy, and nobody does. Have you seen all the down votes on the inauguration recently? They even removed the videos. So many videos of the current administration or the fake administration. They're removing, unlisting the videos because there are so many dislikes because nobody even likes the man. I'm not saying to hate him, but I mean no one voted for him. For 22 months. Okay. There's a lot of political stuff, so I might just skip it. Um, I don't know if this person follows 17th. Okay. Fellow bloggers is playing a long game. He has sent his belongings from Canada to Philippines. He correctly expects those who join him to accept his Yah anointed leadership without causing hellishly divisive controversies or so-called conspiracy theories amidst the low-profile, tightly knit group. Yah will always have the last say. He has street cred and appropriate accreting. What does that mean? For Revelation 11 candidate. These two all guns blazing guys will not be at all concerned with adhering to the niceties of gossip, eschewing Lashon Hara. Yeah, they won't. They're just going to tell it like it is. They'll be, whatever Trump is, they'll be like 100 times more in your face. Because even Trump is politically correct in some ways. Because if he was full on, just not caring, he would probably be, you know, yeah, I won't even say it. 1963, that's all I'll say. But thank God he's safe. Okay, so I'm just reading this man's comment. I'm going to pause it because it's taking a while. Okay, I have to just say I respect Joseph Dumont for even letting his people post and comment on his blog, on his newsletters, because he could always just not publish it, but he lets them. And that shows respect for free speech and other people's opinions. So I totally respect that. And then this comment from Karen is quite thought provoking. She says here, she's Mark Twain who said it. Truth is stranger than fiction, but it is because fiction is obliged to stick to possibilities. Truth isn't. That's interesting. Is this your newsletter or is it from Codgerville's site? Maybe Country Codger's guest writing for you now. Thank you, good sir. Shalom, James. Yes, this is from Codgerville. He's not guest writing for us, but I did post his 2 letters for our readers. We're planning on having another interview with him very soon. And I want to actually he has a video interview, and he's part of that. I need to watch that. When Josiah humbled himself. Okay, I'm gonna just read it offline. Let me just pause. Okay, so this comment is really very on point, very apt. Comment Jim H. He says here, I learned a lesson that the devil will get God's people involved in activities he never called them to do in order to short circuit a man's ministry and bring reproach on Yah's name. Apparently, Josiah thought he should fight on the side of Babylon against Egypt and never consulted God. He certainly never accepted the warning that Scripture itself claims was directly from the mouth of God. Humility is a fleeting characteristic. We must always be on guard against losing it. That's a good point. Um, I've benefited greatly from your teaching and instruction. At times, correction, rebuke from the Word of God. Only you know if God told you to involve yourself in the political issues. There appears to be a lot of things in this arena about which you have no awareness. Paul said, we are not ignorant of the adversary's devices. His devices often bring divisiveness. They can end in death or end ministries, as I've laid out. You've at least started. I won't say that. That's too personal. Sold your house. That's personal too, but I said that. Plan to move to a foreign country. Had your lines of communication with your family cut off. Essentially the same as the death of those closest to you and other things. You've gone through at least 3 of the 5 most difficult situations in life one has to deal with in just a very short time. Yeah, those are, I'd say all of them are pretty hard. They're all packed with pressure. I went through a similar time about 7 years ago. Do you think I'm wrong? We are praying for you. Uh, Step back, let Yah refresh you. It's so easy to get caught up in the day to day. Yeah, you know what? In my opinion, I think it's better that Sightedmoon does not post anything of a political nature because there is just so much in the truth seeking movement that you realize how foolish the MSM is on both sides of the political spectrum. I'm not just talking about CNN, not just talking about all those, normal fake news, New York Times, all that. I'm talking about even Fox News, even Newsmax. Yes, Newsmax, Epoch Times, Next News Network. They spin things so hard to be so um, to fire people up against each other, like identity politics. You're the right, I'm the left, and it's pitting people against each other even though we all want the same things, happiness and wealth and prosperity and families and all that, and to enjoy life. But they vilify each other to such a degree that they won't even present the complete truth. So, for example, CNN will say, this bad thing about the right, and then the right will say this thing, another, something bad, equally bad or worse about the left. but they won't include the part that is actually true. Neither one will um, will concede even a little bit to say, okay, this is the truth, but also this we have to consider this part too, because otherwise there wouldn't be so much animosity. When in reality, what I've realized, especially from the 17th letter of the alphabet, is that um, it, it isn't right or left. It's not about communism or democracy. I'm not saying communism is good. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it's not about all these isms. It's about um, truth, facts against propaganda, lies, and deceit, and just simply making up slanderous stories. Um, and it just so happens that it's one side doing the majority of it. Um, yes, the right, the people on the right, uh, do lie. They have, especially in the previous administrations. They have. They're part of the DS too. However, I'm noticing ever since 2016, they're a lot more truthful. They rely more on the facts, not emotions, not just feelings. They focus more on the facts, on the evidence, evidence based reporting, and actually, they're open to both. They're open to different opinions. Even if you don't agree, they'll still let you say your piece. But when it comes to the other side, they've become so hinged, um, off hinged. They're so extreme that they won't even let you speak. They'll ban you off Twitter, literally silence you like the fascists did because they don't want you to even express your opinion. That's not even democracy. That is communism. That's Marxism. That's fascism. That's not the America that people bled and died for in the 1776 and the Civil War and all the wars fought. Do you think people bled and died so they could have their votes uh, erased, to have a fraudulent election, to have all their rights taken away from them, to have the Bible declared as hate speech? Like, is that really? I don't know. I have to shake my head at that, but I mean, God's in control of it all, and sometimes we just have to see the darkness, and until we cannot appreciate the light until we've lived through the darkness. And so maybe that's what we're going through. um, Maybe it's for 10 days, I don't know, but uh, man, it's been a long 10 days. It's been what, since the 20th, so we still have another day or two. Maybe it's longer than that, I don't know, but how much longer are we going to wait till things change, just even in a small scale? So I'll have to share with this newsletter. And I got really off topic, but you know what? This was a good newsletter. And just thank you for your time. And maybe I'll do the third one if I have the energy. Shalom, Shabbat Shalom.